In the region, the East Africa region, one of the major trends that we have observed over the past year is the abuses by security forces and armed groups in the region. Starting with Kenya, I think the issue of extrajudicial killings and disappearances has persisted. We have seen some encouraging comments from the current president, but we haven't seen tangible steps or measures that the president has put in place to try and address these issues long term. In Uganda, we have continued to experience kidnaps of mainly government critics for quite some time now. I think since 2019, 2018 thereabouts. It climaxed around the election period, 2021. While we had hoped that after documenting those cases and releasing them and meeting the president last year, and following the president's promise that he's going to look into the issue, those disappearances and kidnaps will stop. They haven't stopped. We continue to see people, mainly opposition leaders and critics, continue to be disappeared. Last November, I think about 5 people, including a former presidential candidate, was picked up, even though he was released, but he had been detained for some days. In Tanzania, President Suluhu Hassan started off with a great promise. She tried to unban the media houses that had been banned by her predecessor and freed some government critics. But since then, even though she made some very positive steps, we have also seen the continued harassment of opposition political leaders and government critics. Even though the initial steps were encouraging with regard to the attacks and arrests of journalists, we have seen that trend still persisting within Tanzania. In South Sudan, the South Sudan situation is a little different because it's a country that has been in conflict. Even though there's a peace deal in place, that peace deal hasn't exactly lived up to expectations because even though it was supposed to have been concluded by next month, which will have been the end of the 5-year period, not much has been realized, and we continue to see armed groups, mostly linked to that are aligned to the government, sometimes supported by government security agencies, continue to attack civilians and mainly opposition strongholds in various states. And this is threatening the peace deal, which I think the various parties came together sometime last year and signed an extension to that peace deal of 2 years. It threatens the very peace, the ceasefire that has been there, and South Sudan today faces another possible threat of a recurrence of civil war. The other issue, the trend is the shrinking civic space, part of which I've highlighted, and harassment of political opposition leaders, and sometimes media and civil society leaders. This has been witnessed in Kenya, and of course, you know what has happened in Sudan following some of those images that went around. I think some journalists have been arrested. It is basically part of their work. What they are doing was nothing outside of their work. Uganda, we continue to see harassment of civil society and media. The same, like I mentioned, Tanzania, even though there were initially positive trends, we have seen a recurrence of the same things that used to happen, despite promise by the current president. Then the major issue still, like Mausi mentioned is lack of accountability for all of this. Even if you're just talking about Kenya, the disappearances, some of the disappeared people, the bodies have been found in various places, including River Yala. Nobody knows exactly how many, but we go with the figure of 30 of the bodies that were retrieved from River Yala. But before then, Human Rights Watch had documented many other cases of people who had been disappeared at the coast, northern Kenya and parts of Nairobi, in respect of counter-terrorism. And then there were killings, election related to 2017, election related in 2013, and also in the course of police fighting crime, they have eliminated quite a number of people, some of them clearly looking like summary executions, while the IPOA, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, has taken some steps to investigate and prosecute some of the police officers involved. The rate of success has been very minimal. From 2013, I think we are talking about over 10,000 cases reported to IPOA, but only about 17 successful prosecutions have been realized so far. So accountability to that extent is still a challenge. But even then, IPOA itself is only able to, at least some trend we have observed, IPOA has been able to prosecute only the less politically sensitive cases. The politically sensitive cases or officially sanctioned killings and disappearances, IPOA has not been able to investigate. We have seen the same trend across the region, including Tanzania. Some of the abuses and killings that happened in Tanzania during the elections in 2020, in Zanzibar, we documented about 14 cases, and parts of the mainland Tanzania. None of them have been investigated. No one has been charged, and the authorities basically don't seem to have shown any appetite for pursuing accountability for that. The same goes for Uganda, where I think, like we mentioned, some of our officials had met the president last year in June, and President Museveni had promised to look into some of those cases of disappearances. But up to now, there has been no indication that the government is doing anything. In South Sudan, there have been attacks in Unity State and parts of Equatoria. Even though the government had initially indicated that it had initially set up a committee to investigate attacks in Lair, in Unity State, that committee has never been able to do its work. So accountability-wise, the region isn't doing very well. So that is the trend in the region.